Welcome back to a brand new episode of Two Please. I'm your host, Abhin.
And I'm your co-host Rohit.
Rohit, it has been a while since we've done this.
For various reasons,
Mhm.
Abhin has had a spot of multiple diseases, dengue predominantly,
Primary
in
dengue,
the
yes.
in the last month or so, in November that is. So Abhin's been in recovery. I've been saddled with a bunch of work on the work front, so it's all been like we've had to sort of push this on the back burner. That said, you will start seeing a little bit more consistency from us. In fact, December, I believe we've already put 2 episodes out, and
Hmm.
hopefully this one will be out before the year ends as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, going forward, there will be a little bit more consistency. That said, Abhin, what are we talking about today?
Well, it's the Christmas season, so it's only accurate that we talk about a Christmas film, right? So we've spoken about this movie on prior episodes. I think about 2 years ago, we did an episode on it where we mentioned it in passing. And I think the episode is called Harry Potter and the Chris Columbus movie. I think it's what it's called. But considering that we have now officially moved into the deep dive territory, it's we are now focusing all our efforts on this one film that came out in 1990, and that is the 1990 box office smash hit Home Alone, directed by Chris Columbus, written by John Hughes, starring Macaulay Culkin, who went on to become a household name, Joe Pesci, who had a very weird year,
Yeah.
Daniel Stern, and Catherine O'Hara, to name a few, with a cameo by John Candy thrown in there for good measure. This film has predominantly been a huge part of our childhoods. For I know a lot of us have grown up watching Home Alone, even so much so that I watched it in prep for this episode last week, and it was the sixth most watched film on Hotstar. So it's definitely
Wow.
back, yeah, back in the popularity charts. Though it's not just an American phenomenon, as people like to believe. This film is beloved globally.
I'm guessing that was because it was the season, right?
Hmm.
The fact that it was in the top 10, I'm guessing that's not the case here around, which would be bizarre.
Yeah, I
But
know.
also, this movie is wrapped up in a lot of nostalgia, right? And I think in the course of the episode, I am going to try and make an effort to be as objective as possible and not let my, I mean, to a certain degree, obviously, I want my experiences to color my opinion, but uh, I'm sure the movie has its faults as well. I don't want it to be this, warm, nostalgic blanket where, hey, it was great.
Hmm.
And so, like you said, it's inextricably tied to our childhoods growing up. So, yeah,
Hmm.
before we start dissecting the movie any further, let's start the show.
In their rush to the airport, the McAllisters overlooked one minor detail. Now, his parents have a problem.
I don't care if I have to get out on your runway and hitchhike. I am going to get home to my son.
Two burglars are in trouble,
We know that you're in there. Hands up!
and Kevin is in heaven. Home Alone. Rated PG. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere.
Okay, so Home Alone, 1990, as said before in the introduction, directed by Chris Columbus. Let's get into first impressions. Rohit, what did you think of this film? When was the first time you watched it? This movie is obviously a year older than us.
I think I watched it around 2000 2001 because I remember I was in Dubai, and this was again on one of those CDs that you buy off the road, right? That's I had watched it on one of those CDs. And just to like preface this point, not just, I mean, at large for this episode, personally, I'm like, Christmas for us isn't super relevant in India, right?
Yeah.
Since we don't celebrate it at home. For you, maybe slightly more because you were in a convent school, so you have the trappings that go along with it.
Hmm.
I grew up like 2000 to 2005. I was in Dubai, right? Famously, not
Anti-Christmas.
very not very Christmassy. Yeah. So you don't have vistas of desert dunes in Christmas movies anyway. I mean, I'm not going to delve into it too much. Like I said, famously anti-Christmassy. So that plus generally, I'm not big on festivals. I think festivals in general, I like, in India, it's festivals are more like mass gatherings of relatives and where you have to put on niceties. And
Yeah.
already, I think by age 12, I was already too old for that shit. So in that sense, I don't. like people have that association with the movie as well, right? They watch this movie around the time when it's meeting relatives, it's Christmas. We don't have those associations as much. So I'm able to look at this movie purely as, hey, it's a nice feel good movie. So that's how I watched it. Yeah, even when I was a kid. In fact, this wasn't the first Home Alone movie I'd watched. The first Home Alone movie I'd watched was Home Alone 3, which I think had released around that time.
Hmm.
And I mean, when I watched that, that was the funniest shit ever, right?
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Yeah.
it still is a nice movie. I'd obviously put the original on a much higher pedestal today, but I was introduced to the whole concept through Home Alone 3. I was like, wow, this is just hilarious. And then I watched this. Uh, First impressions, like I could say right off the bat, even as a kid, I could feel that this guy Kevin McAllister has presence. Macaulay Culkin, that's the thing that I think really differentiates him from other child actors, right? Is he has presence, he has charm, and I could sense that even as a kid. Same for Joe Pesci. Obviously, at that point, I didn't know this is the
Hmm.
outlier in his filmography, right? So I
Yeah.
thought, who is this? Who's stout, short, funny guy? I'm sure he does a lot of other funny stuff. And then growing up, I look at his filmography, I'm like, nope, he does not. But yeah, I remember laughing a lot. I think my favorite gag was the whole iron, the clothes iron
Hmm.
hitting Marv in the face.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
very like it's like burnt into my brain that scene. I remember laughing a lot. I remember even back then, sort of rolling my eyes a little at the whole Christmas. It's Christmas, so that old man helping. I'm like, okay, bro, this is alpa corny territory it's going into, but I'll allow it. So yeah, it's a great feel good movie, but it's not without its faults. That was my first impression, even as a kid, and for more, what do I say, scholastic reasons, I still feel the same.
Okay. I mean, this movie obviously is not without its faults. But it is the definition of nostalgia goggles. And I say this not because it has aged the way it has. If you watch the film is tinted with like this blue, this sepia, like this bright nostalgia filter, and it instantly makes you feel warm. So I watched this movie maybe what 97, 98 on a VCD as things were popular on the time. Yes, children, we are that old. VCDs were the thing. VCDs, LDs, and then DVDs. I think a lot of people are aware what DVDs are, but we went from VHS tapes to laser discs to video CDs to DVDs, right? So I watched it on a VCD from my local VCD guy who lived across, whose store was across my house, and obviously it was had a great time with it. I didn't think of it much. For me, it kind of kickstarted my obsession with Macaulay Culkin in the 90s. So I ended up chasing down most of the films he ended up watching. Some of them scarred me and have scarred me for life. Which is primarily being The Good Son. I had no idea what it does. That film is advertised purposefully wrongly because it looks like this heartwarming tale on the cover, and then once you start watching the film, it's almost like a horror show. Like, what the hell? And then the other being My Girl, which has a heartbreaking ending. And then Richie Rich, of course, is another childhood favorite of mine, starring Macaulay Culkin. So big part, and I think Macaulay Culkin was also my gateway to Michael Jackson, because the first music
What
video I
a
ever saw
terrible way
was
to put that, dude.
yeah, I know, but it's just like, for you remember, you see that one popular kid, and then I think this was the time Dangerous was released. So with Dangerous came this huge laser disc for the video for Black or White, and Macaulay Culkin is of course a big part of it. Rohit, you sly bastard, stop laughing.
I am trying so hard to come up with how can I spin this into a Michael Jackson joke, and the other half of me is like, why do you want to do this, dude? This
Yeah, why it's fine. Huh? Anyway, so this film kickstarted a lot of my um, obsession with films, with other films, and because this is how I tend to navigate most films I like these days. If I find an actor that I really enjoy and I
yeah.
really enjoy their performance, I tend to just go chase the filmography. So if I were to trace it back to the very start, it's probably the Macaulay Culkin Home Alone situation. So I watched this movie again. I hadn't seen it in decades. So I watched it a couple of times growing up. But then I reached a point where I just didn't go back to it. I don't know for what reason. I watched Home Alone Lost in New York a couple of years ago, but I haven't seen the original in years. And last Sunday was a bit of a slow Sunday, a sad Sunday. So I said, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch Home Alone. And I had a really nice time with it. By the end of it, I was uh, like, I felt good. And I don't know what it is about me these days. The older I get, the more emo I get in films. So I the Home Alone as the sequence with the old man. I'm like, oh my god, I'm tearing up here. What's happening? So I guess it's just I think this phase of my life where this movie is like a warm comfort blanket, and I don't look at it
Mhm.
as anything else. It's just like good comfort food that you need on a cold day when things are shit, and especially during Christmas, because you spoke about the holidays and about how like it's a gathering, but the holidays historically have been the loneliest times of the year. Even let's say with the American traditions of Thanksgiving, everyone goes back and spends time with their families. But if you've followed threads and
Mm.
conversations, it's probably the worst time because families get together and a lot of stuff that's been buried under the surface comes out. So I think this is obviously the cleaner version of it. Even I wouldn't say the cleaner version because there are parts, the early parts of the film highlight what chaos unfolds in a household where there are two families currently staying.
Yeah.
So it captures that, but obviously it has a more light-hearted take, and see why people gravitate towards it during the holiday season because it is oddly comforting.
I think if I had to describe it in one word, comforting would be
Mhm.
nostalgic slash comforting would be that word. But
Yeah.
great. Those are our first impressions. Now, anything you want to talk about the actors, stuff on set, anything interesting? I think we should do that now in the BTS section.
So I watched a bunch of footage from behind the scenes. I watched a little documentary video on it as well. So this film was originally written by John Hughes in 2 weeks, or rather, he wrote it on a
Yeah,
weekend. And John Hughes at
yeah,
the time was just writing scripts every other weekend and getting them made because that's how good he was, right?
yeah.
And he took it to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers said, "Okay, if you can do it for 10 million, it's a kids' film, we'll do it." And then they went and they built the sets. Like obviously, they found a house in the wealthy part of the Chicago suburbs, but they built the entire house in a gym. And by the time they were ready to roll, the budget had skyrocketed to 14 million. Warner Brothers
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, no." And so the story goes is that Warner Brothers was basically going around the offices of the teams involved in the shoot and shutting them down, saying, "Go home. This film is over." And at the same time, John Hughes had kind of gone to Fox and said, "I have this film. This is this. I have this guy. He's going to be. I did a movie with him called Buck. He's going to be a star. This movie is going to do well." And 20th Century Fox said yes. So the guy, so behind the Warner Brothers rep, the guy who was handling production was walking behind saying, "Stay. Fox has got the production now. You are not going anywhere." So they ultimately got the film off the ground. Joe Pesci was surprisingly said yes to the film, which people were very confused by. I think Robert De Niro said no, but Pesci said yes. And this was also
Isn't
the year,
Goodfellas the same year?
same year, yeah,
God
uh,
damn.
which is a bit of a whiplash if you think about it, right? Because you have
Seriously.
good. I mean, it's a great year for Joe Pesci because you have range, and I
Yeah,
don't think he had the best time shooting this because a lot of it is very slapstick
yeah.
comedy.
Doesn't come across as a very slapstick guy.
Yeah, he doesn't, right? And he has, and he kind of spoke to Chris Columbus about this, about how when he gets a script, he has a tendency to insert swear words in there because that's just how he talks. And obviously, he's not allowed to swear in this film. So the points where he's muttering to himself in the film and he's like speaking gibberish is him trying to overcome that side of him.
What? 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 What happened?
Can you imagine how much better the movie would be if he was allowed to swear though? it'll be infinitely. I mean, it's not a Christmas movie at that point, but it'll be infinitely better.
I mean, maybe you should. There should be like an R-rated version of Home Alone, where Joe
Yeah,
Pesci is just swearing every 25 minutes. You think this is funny, huh? You think this is fucking funny? No. So film gets made. I think they shoot it in a few weeks or in a couple of months. Chris Columbus's directorial, the second feature. I think his first
yeah,
film bombed,
yeah.
and it ends up going into theaters and is number one at the box office for 14 weeks. Famously hated by Siskel and Ebert.
These booby traps are nothing that any 8-year-old kid couldn't make if he had hundreds of thousands of dollars and the special effects department of a movie working for him. It's totally unrealistic.
Right.
And because it goes into that weird subplot involving the burglars and the booby traps and so forth, it lost my interest.
Yeah.
I think at the same time, Home Alone 3 is probably Ebert's favorite Home Alone. So make of that what you will. So films
Yeah.
are very subjective, yeah. So it's but like before this movie got the word of mouth, it did. Siskel and Ebert reviewed it, and this was a time where movie critics basically held the fate of the box
Yeah.
off of a film's box office performance by in their hands, right? So um, in spite of that, this film just skyrocketed to the top. And then when the holidays rolled around, kids started going to movie theaters, and it became a box office smash.
Well, I know you for a fact you did watch this in prep for this episode, and I watched it when it released. But there's a whole documentary series called "Movies That Made Us" on Netflix. There's an
Yeah.
episode on Home Alone. I mean, you guys should check out the documentary at large, but even this episode in itself is very entertaining, insightful. It's a nice watch. So just a recommendation out there. I want to spend a quick minute on the cast of this movie, right? A lot of people who got their, I would say, first big break, or they were exposed to the wider world through this movie, kind of fell into obscurity, but have found their way back to the limelight, and it's a very nice narrative. At least that's how I feel. I mean, first and foremost, there is Macaulay Culkin. Uh, had his share of troubles after that. Typical child star growing up
Mm.
problems, but
The child
he
star, I think. Yeah.
the child star.
Like
Yeah, he is
mm,
the template for child stars having problems.
mm.
But
Actually, no,
he,
that's wrong. I'd say Corey Feldman is probably older than he is.
yeah, and his problems were, oh wow, yeah. Most
Yeah.
child stars seems to have similar problems. Let's not get into
Yeah.
it too much,
Mm.
but he's recently had his Hollywood Star of Fame, star on the whatever the Walk of Fame, and he seems to be doing well in life. And then there's Catherine O'Hara, who, at least for me, her most famous movie role was playing Kevin's mom, although she was in Beetlejuice, like Abhin you rightly said. She has come back into the limelight, found a whole new set of fans through her role as Moira in Schitt's Creek. So there's her. Obviously, Macaulay's younger brother Kieran Culkin, who plays his cousin in the movie,
Fuller.
uh,
Yeah.
Fuller McAllister. Uh, Again, that's where I'd first seen him. He's been on and off in some roles, obviously, but again, he again has found his own place in television, just like Catherine O'Hara playing Roman in Succession. It's just nice, when people who you've seen, say, 30 years back in a completely different avatar, you see them again and you enjoy them in a whole other way. So I just thought I'd spend a minute talking about that. But yeah, I mean, that's stuff from behind the scenes of Home Alone.
Before you wrap up BTS, I think we need to just quickly talk about the movie within the movie. I think it's called Angels with Filthy Souls. The gangster flick
Yeah.
playing on the television that is used in several gags. And is this the first, what do you call, time the phrase "keep the change, you filthy animal" is
Keep the
ever uttered?
change, you filthy animal.
And is
Yeah,
it
and
from here or is it like?
it is,
Hmm,
and that phrase has now gone beyond the film, right? People just can randomly
yeah.
keep quoting it. Yeah. So yeah, and
Hmm,
I'm very convincing, right?
hmm,
For the longest time, I felt they didn't have to like shoot a fake movie. They could have just taken an
yeah.
existing IP and played that. But yeah, they took they went the extra mile to actually shoot that fake film.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's BTS. We've spoken about the movie a lot, but what is the story, Abhin? You want to give our listeners a quick run through, our listeners,
Sure.
viewers.
So the McAllisters are all home for the Christmas holidays, and I think Father McAllister's brother is visiting with his family, and Kevin is being a spoiled, troublemaking brat, fighting with everybody in the house, and then he causes a bit of chaos with when a boxes of pizza arrives, and his mother banishes him to the attic, but they're all leaving to Paris the next day. But unfortunately, they end up oversleeping, and in a weird case, they forget about Kevin, who's asleep in the attic, because during a time when they're counting heads, they accidentally count the head of the neighbor, I think one of the Murphy kids, and as a result, they leave Kevin behind. So Kevin is all home alone, and it just so happens that there are a bunch of two thieves called the Wet Bandits, who are basically robbing the rich during the Christmas break because nobody's home, and they ultimately stumble upon on Kevin, and who takes it upon himself to protect the house. But I think all of this starts because Kevin wishes that his family weren't around anymore, and then he gets his wish the next day, and it's his journey of coming to terms with the fact that his family is the most important thing in life for him.
Plot wise, it's not a very plot heavy film. The setup is intriguing enough for you to get invested in it, and I would say the last 45 minutes or the latter half of the movie is just the plot is two people trying to get in. It's just the screenplay and the gags, right? It's all about the gags. I mean, if you take the gags out of this movie, it's not funny at all, right?
No, not at all.
Because
But again,
like
the gags,
irresponsible parents have left their kid alone, so there's abandonment, and then there's robbers coming in. If you hadn't watched Home Alone, purely on the basis of the plot description you gave, they're like, fuck, this seems like a dark movie. And then
yeah,
you watch it like, oh, it's all gags. It's all. And you have to commend the screenplay for pulling that off, right? Because the
hmm
script is not funny. It's the screenplay that brings the humor, right? Screenplay
yeah.
and the visual humor element. Anyway, I also have a
Hmm.
version of what Home Alone would be if Kevin was a little more grown up. But I'll
Okay,
get to that towards the end of the pod. Abhin is already
okay.
cringing, but
I'm
I'm
just
doing this.
thinking. I'm just thinking,
But
thinking of what awaits me.
that's the plot. Let's quickly get into memorable moments. Let's talk about what do you remember the most? What made you laugh the hardest, or what did you relate to the most?
I think for me, the fire gag is perfect because Joe Pesci's face as the firelights, as his headlights on fake headlights on fire is hilarious. Most of the gags in this film are kind of hilarious. The of course the iron swinging onto Marv's face and knocking him off the
And he
staircase.
has the print for the rest of the film. It's just genius.
Yeah, so I think Marv gets some of the best laughs. You've got him in
Yeah,
the basement with the nail. I don't like
yeah.
nail gags or like this thing, but it's played quite funnily. Besides that, I think for me, one of my most memorable moments is probably to do with the old man,
In the
who's
church.
put. Yeah, and I think even at the start, he's his neighbor, right? Who's supposed to be
Yeah, yeah,
this thing, and the old man. And if you notice, the old man has a wound
yeah.
at the start of the film, which keeps healing throughout the film, and it's some sort of symbolism for time healing most things, and it's just,
Mm.
and I really liked that. Second, the church scene I quite like because it's not because I'm religious or anything, and I'm far from it. If you know my beliefs, but it just feels nice. It feels like these two people bonding, these two guys who've had a misunderstanding of each other. It felt like one of those genuinely nice moments in the film. And I don't know the actor, I forget the actor's name, but he speaks about he's had a pretty big career, but people come up to him and say, "You're the guy from Home Alone," and that made him really happy
Yeah.
because I don't think he got a lot of recognition through most of his years. If he did, I'm sorry. I will probably go through filmography and feel like an idiot after. But this is what I've read. Another memorable moment sequence is obviously the is everything to do with Catherine O'Hara. Like, of course, Macaulay Culkin is the star of this film, but Catherine O'Hara in every scene that she's in
Yeah,
is scene stealing. Like from her
absolutely.
realization
Yeah,
of
that scene is brilliant.
when she's like on the plane, she's like, I can't believe I keep thinking we've forgotten something. And her husband John Hurd is like, I forgot to close the garage. And then she says, yeah, garage. Yeah, yeah. And then she jumps back in her seat and goes, Kevin. That's uh, those are a few. And of course the aftershave is
Yes.
sequence is something we've all done at some point.
Yeah, and we've
Edward
all had,
Munch,
we know exactly how that feels.
yeah, poor Edward Munch getting upstaged by a kid.
I'm guessing that was a reference. That must be a reference. Right? It
Could be,
can't be.
no, possibly is,
And
yeah.
coincidental is a bit hard to believe. It must be
No,
intentional.
apparently it's a coincidence because he was supposed to remove his hands. So he's supposed to put his hands, then remove, and then go, but then he kept his hands there and then went for it. So either Macaulay Culkin is a huge Edward Munch fan at the age of 9, or it is wonderful coincidence.
You never know with these child star types, dude. They're
Yeah,
born out, they come out of the womb all cultured. You
yeah.
know, quoting John Milton in the crib. You never know. But yeah, that's the other thing. I recall a lot of his co-stars saying, even at that young age, like art references aside, he had a great sense of cinema, or cinematic, or what is cinematic, right? Which I think you can't teach. He just knew, hey, if I do this way, it'll have greater impact. And for a kid to give that sort of feedback to the crew or whoever they were working with, he seemed like a very confident young man who knew his art. So I'm not surprised that that input came from him, right? I'm just gonna hold my face, and yeah,
Hmm.
probably it's on the poster. It's if there was one visual image or like element to be emblematic of the film, it would be that, right? And
Yeah.
that was his input. So that's amazing. Yeah, again, it's hard to really pin down memorable moments, like you said, because all of those gags are memorable, but largely it's those, and that doesn't really make sense for us to sit down and spend time describing those gags. But that's what you remember the most, right? And for that reason, this movie has to be seen. You can't really have
Yeah.
someone describe it to you. You really have to watch it to enjoy it. But there's that. The other scene I'd add is towards the end of the film, he comes back and that old man is in the garage tied up, and he comes and puts the blanket on him. Again, that's a very nice, touching scene, and it sort of completes the arc, because at the start of the movie, they've shown the old man so forebodingly. It's almost like he has Jaws music whenever he's on screen, right? To go from that to see the walls break down in the church scene, and for it to come full circle and Kevin actively take care of him, it's a very nice arc for the two of them. So that's another scene that's very vivid in my mind. But yeah, other than that, like you rightly said, a lot of gags, a lot of very nice. As I'm thinking back to the movie, my mind is being enveloped by this warm, cozy fog of nostalgia that I'm trying my best to not get swayed by.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think in terms of memorable moments, I think we've covered
Pretty much
most of
most of
them.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Coming
Okay, let's
to
move on.
the themes.
Hmm.
What is the biggest theme in the movie that you sort of took away?
I think what the biggest theme is possibly family.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Just
I
how
was like,
much
don't
that
say family, I've been so Karan Johar,
family.
but it
This
is
is this is
family.
no Karan Johar means Vin Diesel. So it's like, I mean, this is the bedrock upon which family films are made. Obviously, it's the one that hits you in the face with the most, right?
Yeah,
It's about how it's all about your family. It's about, you may hate each other, you may get annoyed with each other, but at the end of the day, nobody loves you more than your family.
yeah,
So that is, of course, one of the bigger themes. And another thing that stood out to me is just how much childlike innocence glazes over the harsh realities of the world. Like,
mm,
because Kevin's a 9-year-old who doesn't know better, and he just thinks what he's doing is hilarious. Like, he's not questioning his every motive. Like, he's well and truly in the moment. And as a child, you never think too far ahead. You're always living moment to moment, and this is probably at the expense of two poor robbers who are trying to scrape together what they can for the holiday season, and that's a whole other conversation altogether.
What the hell
So
you're saying? Like the capitalist system has reduced them to stealing houses because they can't
yes,
like
of
wow.
course. Hmm.
Flip the script, make it about the
I know.
robbers, and this
Exactly.
chutia kid who wouldn't let them. Like all I need was $20. He hit me in the face with an iron.
Imagine, probably those guys don't have insurance as well. That guy's head is gone.
Yeah,
Joe Pesci is, yeah. There's going to be like an iron mark on Marv's face for
and
the
I'm
rest of
just
his life.
reimagining the movie set in SF with its homeless problems and get on it up and
Those
let's bang that script out.
done. Let's do it home.
And
this
it's the
this is the
home of
same.
this startup yuppie Chuth who has just got his secondaries from his fundraise and is living
Hmm.
life. And these two homeless people who just want to eke out a living, just want his Tesla. They just want to flick his
No,
Tesla, and this guy won't let them do that. Flip the script. There you go, and call it Home
I mean,
Elon.
oh God, I'm gonna hell.
But yeah, I mean that's a good way to look at it.
Hmm.
I also wanted to add a bit on the family point that you made, right? I mean, jokes apart, yes, and I did mention myself that festivals can be stressful because there's extended family, there's a bunch of people who you probably meet once or twice a year, uh, and you have to be like you have to play nice. But outside of that, your core family, we do take them for granted. It happens, and it's human nature.
Hmm.
However much you want to prevent against it, it's natural. I remember, I know you've gone through that when you moved to New York. I remember when I moved out of Bangalore to go to Bombay for my MBA. All of that bravado you have, I'm a grown up person. I am independent. I'm all of that. The first night you spend away from family in a new house in a new bed, all of that bravado vanishes, right? You're just like, shit, I am like, none of the things that give me comfort are here right now. And it's not as much the possessions, it's the people that give you that comfort, right? So in those moments, you really come to appreciate the family that you have. So the message this movie has is evergreen. It's a message we sometimes forget, but life gives us better reminders of it now and then. Uh,
Yeah.
and especially
Uh,
now that we're getting at that age where our parents are also, getting on in years. I
older.
know,
Yeah.
thankfully, it's still uh, far down the line, but those thoughts start coming into your mind. You're like, cherish the time you have left with them. Also, the other point you made, right? I think it's a brilliant way to put it. It it just opened my eyes to there's a parallelism that you can look at, right? What we were talking
Hmm.
about between the script and the screenplay. The script sounds very morbid, but the humor is where the screenplay is where the humor comes in.
Hmm.
There's a parallelism there for how in reality the situation Kevin was in was pretty fucked up, but because his childlike innocence helped, sort of paper over the fact that he was essentially abandoned by his family, and he made a game out of what was essentially a very morbid situation. That is
Hmm.
exactly, the script versus screenplay conversation we were having. So the screenplay is in essence the childlike curiosity or the innocence or how he was able to put a fun spin on what was essentially a pretty messed up situation. So great point there. I mean that really opened my eyes as to how I could reconcile with the dichotomy of the script and the screenplay for this movie, right? I think it's the childlike
Yeah.
innocence that is at the
Hmm.
heart of the way Kevin approaches the situation. The other thing I want to talk about is irresponsible parenting, right? That is an unavoidable theme of this movie. Like, how do you miss a kid, right? He's not a packet of chips. How do you miss a kid?
Twice, no
How,
less.
yeah, and at the second time, somebody is calling CPS, right?
Yeah.
The second time this happens, these people have too many children. They're not
Yeah.
able to take care of their kids. Something needs to be done. They need an intervention.
I mean, I'm sure our parents at some point have forgotten to pick us up from places. At least mine have. I remember this point where a couple of when I was in 10th, 5th standard, I was waiting outside the school gate, and up until 7:30, nobody showed up. And then my mom and dad just show up hysterical, like, "Where are you?" I was like, "I've been here. You told me to wait here. I've been waiting here." And she's like, "Oh, I thought he was picking you up, and then I thought the driver was picking them up, and then we come home and you're not there." And so I was like, "I don't know. I've just been here. I mean,
Which
I know
is
where I live, but yeah, but at the same time, if I walk home, at 10 years old, I've had it. So,
Yeah, no. I mean,
mm,
that has happened to me once, I guess, as well, where
mm,
they clean forgot that they had to pick me up.
yeah,
But
yeah.
to put that in context, right? Imagine if your parents were to call you 6 hours later and you're like, "Where are you? Pick me up." Like, "Oh, we're in Paris. Sorry, bye." This is what happens in the mood.
I don't think this movie like works in Indian setting because the moment like you call up someone, be like, "Oh, you're like this one family member is always in town. They will show up to your house.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Oh, we
Mm,
forgot you. It's fine. We will call
it's fine.
this
So and so uncle, so and
Chikkappa
so
or this
auntie.
Chachaji.
Yeah,
Ashte, they'll come and
done. It's
sort
over.
it."
Home, home, not alone.
Correct. Yeah, just
Go
being
and go.
force-fed food and like,
Mm,
you're happy. And like you come aram say, it's
mm,
fine. And
yeah.
they let me watch cartoons here. You don't even let
Mm,
me watch cartoons at home. I can do
exactly.
whatever I want. They're giving me
Mm,
puri palya every day. Sorted,
yeah.
bro. You take your time. You want to go visit another country? You want to go do Spain
No,
also
no,
and come?
come,
It's
come.
fine.
I'm having a great time. Yeah.
I'm not even going to school. It's not even vacation. I'm just chilling. I'm bunking school.
Uh,
But yeah, I think even thematically, we broadly covered the themes of the film. It's not a very theme heavy film. The main theme is family and Christmas, right? I mean, yeah,
uh-huh.
we did spend some time talking about Christmas at the start, but that's the other overt theme in this movie, right? It's coming together at Christmas. That sounds so.
I mean, if you are, I'm very happy for you.
Oh my god. But yeah, it's all about how family is brought together.
Comes
I'm
to,
just trying to I'm just trying to avoid saying that. It's just how it's how the festive period brings families together, and
okay, there we go.
I'm guessing you resonate more with it if you're a wasp in America. You know, the movie is the characters are these white Americans.
Mm,
Just guessing they're Anglo-Saxon Protestants, but whatever, right?
yeah. Mm,
It's meant for that demographic. I'm guessing again. I'm going out on a limb here. I might be very wrong. But this movie may not appeal to, say, African Americans as much. I'm sure they have their own set of Christmas movies. It doesn't appeal as much to us because, I mean, for us, Christmas itself is not entirely
mhm.
in the picture. But yeah, it was meant for this core demographic. It has found some universal appeal.
Yeah,
But I'm guessing for that core demographic, this is like ticking all of the boxes, right? Like,
pretty
this is
much.
like the prototypical festive movie.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's those are the themes I had in mind. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's about it. This film is not deep. It doesn't pretend to be deep. It's exactly what you get on the box, right?
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much.
Mm.
So as the last section, we have what if X were to do Y. Before we get to that, we've got a choice selection for our interpretation of who would direct this film. Before that, I'm going to take a shot at it, which
Okay.
is if the same movie was set with Kevin being he's what 9 in the movie. Say if he was just
Yeah.
5 years older, right? Say he's 14, he is
So let's say 15.
15. Yeah, I mean there are some early
Mm.
starters, but say he's 14, 15. He's discovering the wonderland that is his body, and he is home alone. His parents are in Paris for a week. Now imagine a 15-year-old boy home alone. He's got cable, he's got tissues, he's got some form of
I think
lubrication.
No, I think and they kind of allude to it a little bit. No, in Buzz's room, he finds Buzz's magazines,
Yeah. So he also has
and
the material, even if you don't have TV,
mhm,
you
mhm,
make do
yeah.
when the time comes. And okay.
So
But now in this situation, imagine Harry and Marv trying to break into the house, and they walk into the living room. They're like, "Hey, let's pick some things off the mantelpiece," and then just off of the living room into the TV room, they hear loud moans out of the top of the TV, and they just see Kevin spread eagled on the sofa, chafed raw, just going at it like mountain of tissues next to him. And Harry and Mom decide, you know what, I'm okay with homelessness for just a little longer. I need to get the fuck out of whatever the situation is. And that is Home Alone with Kevin McAllister as a 15-year-old.
you're saying the only thing that would have stopped, uh, what do you call the robbery was a preteen, no, like not preteen, a teenager in the throes of puberty.
Absolutely. I mean,
Nothing
at
is
that
scarier.
point, you have to come back with a pair of gloves. You don't know what he's done where, right?
It's also fair.
And
I
a
think
black light.
Rohit is Rohit is just giving you. Oh wow! I always say this to friends: like, if you're going to stay in a hotel that's slightly off this thing, just take a black light and go with you because you don't know what
Yeah,
is where. Or if you're renting
exactly.
a new apartment, just be very careful. Okay,
It
let's
is,
quickly move on from this.
yeah. So
The further we get away from
now
it, the
you have
better.
that image in your head, guys. Enjoy. When it comes
Hmm.
to what if X were to do Y, we decided, hey, nice family festive movie, nostalgic spirit of Christmas. How can we fuck this up? Right? So we decided to ask Chat GPT to imagine itself being Argentinian. He's Argentinian. The Argentinian director Gaspar No, and known for his famously light-hearted movies where nothing bad happens. People are very cheerful. It's very well lit. I'm being sarcastic, guys. He makes fucked up films. So, like, what if Gaspar Noé were to make Home Alone, right? And
Hmm.
this is what ChatGPT had to say. So the setting is that the McAllister family home has become a haunting and labyrinth mansion with long, eerie hallways, dimly lit rooms, and unsettling decor. The suburban neighborhood takes on a surreal and disorienting atmosphere, enhancing the feeling of isolation. Firstly, this what the fuck?
Yeah.
Characters. Kevin McAllister is portrayed as a complex and tormented child, grappling with inner demons that manifest in terrifying ways. The burglars, Harry and Marv, are reimagined as malevolent entities that may exist only in Kevin's fractured mind. I just want to know firstly, like, what is in Gaspar No movies? I only watched half of one of them, and I'm just like, this is
Which
too.
one?
What's the one with the top down? The entire movie is like from top down, and it goes.
Irreversible.
No, no, not Irreversible. Irreversible is also top down.
Yeah,
I
it
think I
starts
watched.
off with the top down, and then it
Yeah,
keeps
yeah, yeah.
going, and the camera keeps turning. Huh?
Correct. I think I watched like a few minutes of those, and then I was like, "Cool, I'm a head out. I don't want like
I
I don't want to
watched
do this."
Climax. I watched Love, and I've seen one more, which I'm forgetting. Irreversible. I started, and everyone keeps saying it's possibly the worst thing you can do for yourself because it's very graphic in this thing.
Yeah, I saw
So I have
part of
not.
the scene. I'm like, "Cool."
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, surprisingly, Vincent Cassel and Monica Bellucci met on that and got married. It was make of that
I
what
don't
you will.
understand. Yeah,
Mm. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a fair few, but I mean, I'm very, I'm very amused by his Criterion Closet tour where he walks in.
One of my very favorite movies ever. I have it on DVD, but I don't have it on Blu-ray, so I'm sure there are extras that I have never seen.
Great movie. I'm like, that's all you need to know about Gaspar, no?
yeah. Checks out. So here's the
Yeah.
plot of Gaspar Noé's Home Alone. As Kevin's
Mm.
family departs for their holiday vacation, the film takes a sharp turn into psychological horror. Kevin's solitude becomes a descent into madness with his fears and anxieties coming to life. The home becomes a nightmarish playground where reality and hallucination blur. Throughout the film, Gaspar Noé employs his signature visual and narrative techniques, including disorienting camera work, long takes, and jarring sound design. The audience is taken on a disturbing journey into Kevin's psyche, experiencing the terror and confusion that accompanies his unraveling mental state. I don't think this version of the movie even requires Harry and Marv, dude. Kevin is fucking himself up. Like,
I mean, they're
and
there. No, they're like these two things on his shoulder that just
then
messing
yeah,
with him.
and they're just like an audience to this. They're just watching like, bro, this kid is fucked. What was happening? This kid needs help, right?
Hmm.
Honestly, this is more closer to reality, right? If you leave a kid at home, this is more likely to happen than what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
So anyway, coming to themes, Alone in the Abyss. Oh, by the way, ChatGPT said this movie should, if Gaspar knew what to direct it, would be called Alone in the Abyss, not Home Alone. Clearly, that gives you an indication of what we are dealing with here, right? So, Alone in the Abyss explores themes of loneliness, childhood trauma, and the thin line between reality and imagination. The film delves into the psychological impact of neglect and abandonment, true, highlighting the vulnerability of a child left to confront their demons alone. Super true.
You
Actually,
know
I
what? You know
like
what would make this movie worse
what.
is that you make the like somebody has accidentally like one of the uncles has accidentally spiked one of the milk bottles with LSD. So Kevin is just drinking milk, and he's on an
He's
acid trip.
tripping ball.
In true
Oh,
Gaspar style, I think climax
yeah,
also is basically
correct,
a bunch of
correct.
dancers take ecstasy or take
LSD.
LSD, and then their whole perception of reality is warped.
Yeah, they lose their mind
Hmm.
and they start going game shit. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's Gaspar knows Home Alone. I kind of like it.
That's,
I'd
I'd
watch it.
watch it. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I watch him turn into
I'd
John
watch it
Kramer at
once and
the
never
end of the
again.
movie.
And then run into.
John Kramer at the end of the movie. I want to play
Yeah,
a
I'd watch
game.
that. I'd watch that. Yeah, maybe Kevin grew
Okay,
up to be Jigsaw.
possibly. I mean, it's a very strong possibility.
I mean, it's there, right? Games and like
Hmm.
fucked up games which hurt you. Kevin is
Yeah,
Jigsaw.
that's a double feature: Home Alone and Saw One.
So there's Gaspar Noé is Home Alone and Home Alone. I'm interested in both.
Yeah, I would watch Home Alone for sure. Home Alone is where it's at.
Yeah. Try to think of a tagline that has something to do with electric, but I'll come up with it, I'm sure.
Okay, I'm sure we'll stick it on the fake poster. We end up making we're not making any posters. This movie had this episode has to go out on Christmas Day. It'll be extremely minimal with
Tiny.
B-roll and yeah, tight and out, and it's going to be out there.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's our Home Alone. If you
Hmm.
guys feel that there's something we missed, if you guys feel there's something you wanted us to talk about or you want to talk about, there'll be a section on the episode as well, right? I've been on
Yeah,
Spotify.
yeah. Which tells us what you want to talk about, what you thought of the episode. Just let us know, and we'll take it from there. Also, before we wrap this up, I kind of want to give a quick shout out to the stunt team on this film. I don't think this film works without the stunts because these guys go up for massive airtime and land really hard. So, and not a lot of appreciation happens for good stunts
Yeah,
these days or even back in the day, right? So, props to the stunt team that sold those acts so well.
I agree. I agree. I mean, this movie is made because of the stunt team. It wouldn't
Yeah,
exist because of them.
exactly.
I'm glad you remembered to do that.
Hmm.
Important. But yeah,
Yes.
that's Home Alone. We will be back next week with probably a New Year's themed episode. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Or I guess, I mean, what have I got
all
to lose?
right, that's how we
Mm,
operate here. Abhin
yes.
messages me 2 days before. Movie name question mark. I'll be like yes or vice versa, and
Uh,
be like cool.
mhm.
I'll see
Done.
you on the recording. We'll figure
Mm,
it out.
th-
We'll spitball it.
That's yeah, basically what it is. So we'll see you hopefully for New Year's. Until then, take care. See you
Okay. Bye
and
bye.
bye bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.